What's up, fellow travelers? No matter where you live, you've probably come across the term expat, shortened from expatriate, and the term migrant worker or migrant labor. You probably have a vague idea of each in your head. An expat is most likely white, a member of the professional stratum of society, and the migrant laborer is usually from the global south and treated as a commodity or human capital. While this dog was born and bred here in Vietnam, neither of the interns were. They each come from a different country, and so we are around these terms a lot. So let's do a little bit of analysis into what these terms actually mean and why they're used in the contexts that they are. There is actually some pretty significant political economy wrapped up in these terms, and a lot of the debate we've seen, particularly online, tend to simplify the difference, saying things like, white people call themselves expats and call everyone else migrants. Or even, expats are members of the labor aristocracy while migrants are not. Both of these takes, to us anyway, seem reductionist, or that they reduce complex social issues to a single social dynamic, forgetting good old intersectionality. While the difference between the two terms is certainly not purely semantic and is definitely an index of global class structure, the racial and imperial presuppositions that underpin the dichotomy between the two terms shouldn't be left out of the discussion. So let's get some of the substance cleared up right away. Both the migrant laborer and the expat are doing the same thing in formal economic terms. They are both people who relocate geographically to sell their capacity to work for a wage. Both are workers, both are members of the working class, the proletariat. They both enter a labor market where they don't own the means of production, producing surplus value for an employer, etc., etc. This means that the distinction between the expat and the migrant doesn't arise from their relations to the means of production. Rather, what we're positing is that the distinction comes from relation to imperialism. This is why a person from Britain of African descent would be considered an expat, while a white Polish person working in Britain would be considered migrant labor. The same is true of a Vietnamese person working in Japan, migrant labor. But a South Korean working in Vietnam, definitely an expat. This differentiation in the valuation of labor power clearly doesn't simply stem from race, class, or nationality alone, but a combination of all three, with the final one being the most important. So what are the actual material roots of the distinction? Well, they trace their way all the way back to good old friend of the show, colonialism. Workers who come from oppressed nations, the global south, former colonies, tend to enter metropolitan labor markets under conditions of precarity. They have weak passports. Legal statuses are generally highly conditional. Their wages, while higher than at home, are systematically lower than those of native workers performing comparable tasks. The system sees them as raw labor, interchangeable, temporary, and politically disposable. In contrast, workers from the imperial global north nations move across borders with the privileges of their state's position within global structural hierarchy. They travel with passports that grant them mobility without inherent suspicion. Beyond salaries, they're often given expatriate packages, housing allowances, international school fees, hardship pay. They are welcomed as some kinds of bearers of expertise or management culture, even when their actual skill level is relatively unremarkable. The term is to invoke a sense of a professional on an adventure, not a lowly laborer. The word deliberately strips away the wage-labor relation and replaces it with an aura of voluntary cosmopolitanism, even if the speakers aren't necessarily aware of it. Let's look back at the labor aristocracy. They are the stratum of the working class within the empire that are essentially bribed by a share of monopoly super profits that are extracted from the colonies and semi-colonies. It's not a subjective attitude, rather an objective economic position. They receive wages significantly above the value of labor power, enough to secure a relatively stable, comfortable existence. Their material interests become tied, in the short term, to the perpetuation of the system that generates this privilege. While the expat is often a direct embodiment of this stratification, it isn't necessarily the case. If we consider a German engineer who relocates to Dubai, it's clear that they will receive a higher salary and be treated with more respect than a Pakistani engineer doing the same work. And that differential isn't a reward for higher intelligence, nor higher technical capacity. In this context, the higher wage is a premium paid by the oil rents of the monarchy that secure a partnership with Western capital. It's a premium that simultaneously buys political loyalty from a segment of the working class back home and reinforces the racialized hierarchy of labor on site. The migrant from Pakistan, meanwhile, will generally receive a wage that barely covers subsistence, has to live in a labor camp, and may have their passports confiscated. Both are proletarians, but one is slotted into the lower circuits of exploitation and the other is elevated to a privileged buffer layer. This is because the UAE is higher in the structural hierarchy than Pakistan, but lower than Germany. So why does the division exist? Well, as everything under capitalism, because it benefits capital. The ideological function of the migrant-expat split is designed to fracture the working class along both national and racial lines, obscuring the shared class position. It teaches the expat that they're not really a worker, that they're something closer to a partner of capital on temporary foreign assignment. It teaches the migrant that they're a guest whose presence is a privilege to be endured, not a laborer with inherent rights. These two categories are kept from recognizing their common condition, which is that both are separated from the means of production, both labor under command, and both generate surplus value that is extracted from them. Instead, they're given opposed identities, one elevated and the other degraded. This splitting is necessary and essential for the reproduction of imperialist wage hierarchy. This has all been a long-winded ass way of saying, I don't actually know, really. I went into this hoping to come to some kind of meaningful conclusion, but I haven't. Should we stop using the word expat altogether? Probably, maybe not. It does describe a real relation in the real world. I don't know. Let us know your opinions in the comments. If anyone hung around this long on such a video, it means a lot to us. Please lick that like button, pause subscribe. The algorithm likes that shit and definitely doesn't like this kind of content, so we'd really appreciate it. If you think we've made any kinds of mistakes in our analysis, please let us know how or why in the comments. Love you all. Until next time, bye bye.